Hello, I'm Sebastian Michael, and this is this Saturday's Sonnet. Sin of self-love possesseth all mine eye, and all my soul, and all my every part. And for this sin there is no remedy, it is so grounded inward in my heart. Methinks no face so gracious is as mine, no shape so true, no truth of such account, and for myself mine own worth do define as I all other in all worths surmount. But when my glass shows me myself indeed, beated and chopped with tanned antiquity, mine own self-love quite contrary I read. Self so self-loving were iniquity. 'Tis thee, myself, that for myself I praise, painting my age with beauty of thy days. And this is the extraordinarily self-reflective and introspect Sonnet 62. We have been on quite a journey already, and I promised last time that now, as we are in the middle act of the story, bearing in mind, in brackets, that the sonnets were not written as a story, but they chart a story. They were written moment by moment as the story unfolded. And if that is to be accepted, if we accept that there is a story behind these sonnets, then I would argue we are now in the middle act, in the third act if it were a Shakespearean drama, or in the second act if it were a three-act play or a Hollywood film script. And what's happened in past episodes is that sometimes I have charted the route, the path from where we were the time before to where we are now by means of the sonnets in the week's batch. And I particularly want to do this now, this week, because the journey that takes us to where we are now, to this unbelievably honest and frank self-assessment, is vastly interesting. I keep saying words like fascinating and intriguing and amazing, and because it is. But that's what makes the whole story so incredible. And so come with me as we chart this route with the last few sonnets that lead up to number 62. We last talked about sonnet 52, which left me, the poet, in triumph and with hope. Remember that last line? The last couplet, blessed are you whose worthiness gives scope, being had to triumph, being lacked to hope. And I argued at that point that this was evidence for the case that what is being played out here in these sonnets is a game of passion, power, and possession. And I think we see this game continue now and become quite a bit more serious, actually. Because we don't know, of course, the detail of how these sonnets come about. They may be quite frivolous in a way. They may be actually quite playful in the literal sense, that they're almost like a game being played. They may be teasing quality or an ironic quality or a bantersome quality. We don't know the exact nuance. What we do have is simply the words. And the words make an incredible progression now from this high point of triumph of me, the poet, celebrating my triumph and claiming my triumph and expressing hope that I may have more of the same triumph to experience, to celebrate, to call mine. To number 62, 10 sonnets later, sin of self-love. A sin for which there is no remedy, it is so grounded inward in my heart. How in a few sonnets, we still don't know what the spacing is. And I imagine that the spacing of these sonnets is probably irregular. We probably can't assume that he writes one every day or every 2 days or every 3 days like clockwork. There are probably bursts. There clearly are some sonnets that belong together that are written as a couple, or even three that belong together. And sometimes I think we can probably assume that more time lapses, especially when they are apart, because remember, they don't have first-class mail, do they? They don't have a courier service, or the courier, whoever it is a literal courier on a horse who has to ride all the distance and take a letter from the lover to the beloved and from the beloved to return. Days may pass on occasion even weeks may pass. But as I promised earlier on, and we will get, I don't want to anticipate this because it will come up in the sonnets, we will get there, we will get to a point where we know exactly, where we hear exactly how much time has passed from the first encounter to then, when we are not quite at the end, but really towards the end of the sonnets. But I think it's reasonable to assume that a few days may pass between these sonnets, that we are talking about days here, maybe a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, but not months and certainly not years, from sonnet 52 to sonnet 62. What is changing? What is happening in this relationship to yield such big colorations, such big variations in mood and atmosphere? So what is happening between these two people? Well, if you say to somebody, be this in writing or face-to-face in person, I own you. Even if you don't say it in these words, if you say it in some words that can be understood as you saying, I own you, I have a piece of you, I have you. The reaction to this may be any number of things, of course. Either the person who you say this to agrees and is quite happy with it and kind of enjoys that. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that the other person is more or less indifferent. So, well, you think what you think and I think what I think, and we'll just leave it at that. Or the other person could become quite prickly. The other person could become could assert their own authority, their own independence, and their own even superiority. Now, we established a long time ago, several episodes ago, that the young man we're talking to is A, very young, B, very good looking, C, has very high status. We haven't named him, and I keep saying that we are not naming him yet because I don't want to. I don't want to get into the argument, is it him or is it not him yet? It doesn't really matter just yet. It will matter eventually, and it will become quite relevant. And also it will make sense to at one point or another put a face and a name and a person to this beautiful young man. But at the moment I think that would be too soon. But what we know is he has high status, we know he's very rich, and that makes the assertion of the writer, of me, the poet, back in 52, where I say, when I've had you, I have cause to triumph, and even when I lack you, I have cause to hope. I have reason to hope. That makes that quite a strong imposition potentially, and we of course don't get the responses. We're essentially eavesdropping on one side of a conversation. It's almost like listening to somebody on the phone, not being able to hear what the person is saying. But well, what is this young man saying? What does he say? What does he write back? Does he write sonnets of his own? That's kind of possible. I'm not suggesting that he does, but he might be sending back letters. Or there are clearly instances when they are together, and if they are together, then of course they have a chance to talk to each other, and that gives the young man the opportunity to directly say to Shakespeare what he makes of these sonnets, what he thinks of these sonnets. And we don't know what the young man thinks of these sonnets. We don't have any evidence of it at all. I say at all, except we have Shakespeare's responses to them. We know how Shakespeare reacts, if it's a reaction, but would it not be a reaction? We either have to assume that Shakespeare just writes sonnet after sonnet after sonnet and nothing ever comes back, in which case it's like a broadcast or a podcast for that matter. But far more likely, and I remind ourselves that in the absence of certainty, likelihood is our friend. Much more likely is that this is an exchange, and we hear one side of the exchange. We don't know what the other side, what the young man is saying. But although we don't know what he's saying, we know what Shakespeare is saying, and Shakespeare says some extraordinary things just about now, between 52 and today's Saturday and 62, because it goes from blessed are you whose worthiness gives scope being had to triumph, being lacked to hope. Then there's this beautiful sonnet 53, the afterglow, which I've already mentioned. Then there is 54, where Shakespeare says, well, beauty is one thing, but how much more beautiful is beauty when it's also truthful, suggesting that we have a bit of a problem there. Then we have 55, where once again Shakespeare does what he's done several times before, says that it is his writing, it is his verse, his lines that make the young man live forever. And then we have 56, which to me sounds like the immediate preparation for another separation, where Shakespeare almost implores love itself to be durable and to be refreshed. And if at that point we have another separation, then also at this point approximately, the young man must either have done something or said something, or something must have happened that changes the tune completely, because now in this week's batch, 57, being your slave, what should I do but tend upon the hours and times of your desire? Being your slave. And it goes on to say, I have nothing to do other than what you command. Shakespeare suddenly, I as the writer suddenly submit to this far greater status of the young lover, who's after all much younger. We know this for certain, there's no doubt about it. And it also makes clear that whatever the young man is up to is his business. It's none of my business. All I can do is wait and think of other people who are around you, how happy you make them by just being around them. But I have no call upon your time. I am not here to do. I have no authority to tell you what you can do. Then 58, that God forbid that made me first your slave, I should in thought control your times of pleasure. Same thing. Far be it from me to tell you of all people what to do. Of course you are at liberty to go out and enjoy yourself. Well, to me, I don't know what you make of this, but to me this sounds like taking everything back. I said I had you and I was able to triumph. And now I say, no, absolutely, you could, of course your time is right, of course you could do whatever you like, of course I'm not going to tell you what you can do. But the tone actually of 58, or at your hand the count of hours to crave, being your vassal bound to stay your leisure. Oh, let me suffer, being at your beck, the imprisoned absence of your liberty. There's a little bit of, he's almost going over the top, saying, of course you do whatever you like, but inside there is a resistance to that. It's very clear that Shakespeare maybe doesn't quite actually mean that, but he has to say it because this is the kind of thing you say to somebody who you don't want to lose, whom you want to reassure that, of course, you're not overstepping the mark at all, you're not actually infringing on their liberty. This is classic relationship material. This is classic material where somebody feels totally committed to the other person, or extremely committed at any rate, and the other person goes, oh, whoa, we are not actually married to each other. Remember, you are married to somebody else. You have a mistress whom I had a thing with too, and step back, and Shakespeare steps back. I, as the poet, I'm stepping back. I'm taking a big step back. I'm saying, I'm your slave. I'm at your beck and call. I have no important things to do other than to wait on and for you. Complete reversal of the position, the game of passion, power and possession that, as I call it, is being played out in real time, you could say. And then there is almost this, having taken a step back and down in the pecking order, if you like, down in the hierarchy, looking up to this young man and saying, well, you are the master here. And having already set up that there will be a separation, either there will be a new separation or the separation continues, but it makes much more sense, in view of all of this, it makes much more sense if this is a new separation. Now we have 59 and 60, a reflection on time. To me, it makes some sense to suggest that the reflection on time may stem from time passing. The minutes are compared to the waves encroaching on the shore. And there's quite a beautiful thought in 59 where he says, I wish I could look back and see what 500 years ago people would have made of you. Would they be able to praise you in the way that I am now? Or would they praise you even better? So he goes back to praising the young man, praising his beauty, honouring him, exalting him in a way you could say, and reflecting very much on time. And then we have one more significant and telling step on the journey we're charting from last week, where we were triumph and hope, to where we are now, sin of self-love. There's one more step, 61. Is it thy will, thy image should keep open my heavy eyelids to the weary night? So again, we're separate. We already know this, but here it's confirmed we're separate, and I can't sleep. I have to think of you all the time. Is it thy will? Dost thou desire my slumbers should be broken, while shadows like to thee do mock my sight? Is it thy spirit? Is it you? Do you want this to happen? Is it your will that this is happening, that I can't sleep? And then listen to the answer. Oh no, thy love, though much, is not so great. It is my love that keeps mine eye awake, mine own true love that doth my rest defeat, to play the watchman ever for thy sake. What an extraordinary realization I have just made. I love you differently to the way you love me. This question is now being answered, whatever has happened, however close we've been, however physical, sexual, sensual we may or may not have been. We know by now that there is very strong indication, certainly from the words, and we are always going by the words. The words give us very strong indication that there has been a very close contact between these two. But the nature of the love, the depth of the affection, the quality of this love is different. It's not his love that keeps me awake, it's my love for him, mine own true love, as opposed to perhaps your not so true love. We know the young man has not been true. We know this. It's in the words. It's been said. It's been expressed. We even know who with. We don't know the individual. We know it's a mistress. And we know that now. But now, I, the poet, am worried. I've been worried before. There was a sonnet we talked about where I was worried that you may be stolen from me. I can't lock you away. And I'm afraid you may be stolen from me. For thee watch I, whilst thou dost wake elsewhere, from me far off, with others all too near. We don't know who these others are, but we know you have other people around you, and they are all too near. And then, at that point, the scene is ready for a moment of reflection and introspection and self-awareness. And what does it mean? Sonnet 62. Sin of self-love possesseth all mine eye, and all my soul, and all my every part. Do I need to translate this? I don't think I do. The sin, but it's a sin of self-love, of loving myself, of being arrogant, of being deluded to an extent, of overestimating myself. The sin of putting myself above my station in a way that permeates everything. Mine eye, because when I look at myself, I see a more beautiful person than I am. My soul, the essence of my being, the soul of me. My every part of me is taken up with this sin. And for this sin there is no remedy. It is so grounded inward in my heart There is no solution, there is no remedy. It is so deeply rooted, so grounded inward in my heart, so deep inside my heart. This is rooted. Here comes the explanation. Methinks no face so gracious is as mine. He doesn't call himself beautiful, he calls himself gracious. And I think nobody's more gracious than I am. No face so gracious as mine. No shape so true. No, the trueness of the shape. A true shape is a good shape. Is the correct shape. Is the right shape. And of course, again, here comes the word true. The truthful person, the honest and solid, and dependable person. I think nobody equals me in that. No truth of such account, nobody else's truth, nobody as truthful as me, nobody as honest and truthful and solid and dependable as me. And for myself, mine own worth do define, and for myself, I create my own definition. I define myself as follows: as I all other in all worths amount. This is my definition of me. I'm better than everybody. That's what I think. This is how my self-love expresses itself. I think I am pretty special. Great Shakespeare I am. Great poet. I'm so cool. But when my glass shows me myself, indeed, when I actually look at myself and I see myself, beated and chopped with tanned antiquity. A tan is not a good thing in Shakespeare's day. If you are exposed to the sun, that's either because you are a labourer or a farmer or somebody of a lowly status in that society, or because you've lived so long and ridden on your horse, maybe in battles or wherever you've gone, but you've been out so much, you've been out and about so much, you're worn out, you're battered, you're chopped, your skin is cracked, you're tanned, you've been exposed to the elements, you wear the scars of nature on your face. You are not a young, fresh, beautiful thing. You are beaten and chopped by tanned antiquity, age, antiquity. Mine own self-love quite contrary I read. Then I realise, begin to read my self-love as something quite different, as something really quite different. Self, so self-loving, a self that loves itself in that way, were iniquity. It would be an iniquitous thing to do. It would be an abhorrent thing, a sinful thing to do. Hence the sin of self-love. 'Tis thee, myself. You are the person who I praise when I look at me. It's actually you who I sense myself to be together with, who I claim, as you know, for myself. It is you who I'm actually praising. I'm actually praising you. Painting my age, I'm decorating, I'm adorning my age, my own agedness, my own years, with beauty of thy days, with the beauty that you bring, because you're still young and you're still fresh. It's a devastating honesty and laying bare of your soul and of your truth as the writer here. It's almost painful to listen to it, and yet it's so absolutely gorgeous, because it is so honest, because there is so much truth in it. And then, almost as a coda to this, we've charted the whole route. We've mentioned every sonnet leading up from last week to this week's sonnet 62. And there's one more, almost like a coda to it. Listen to this. Against my love shall be as I am now, with time's injurious hand crushed and or worn. Against the moment when my love is as I am now, against that I invoke the only thing I really have. I don't want to call it a weapon, it's so aggressive, and we've got too much aggression as it is in the world, but the only thing that I have, the only power, call it a power maybe, I have, to prevent you from becoming that which I am, to become what I am, which is, I look at myself as an old man by now, certainly compared to you. In reality, by our standards, Shakespeare probably isn't all that old, but he thinks of himself as old. I think of myself as being old by comparison, and a little bit, and more than a little bit past it. And against the time when you are, as I am now, I have one power that I can invoke, and that is these black lines that I'm writing now. This is sonnet after sonnet that I'm writing. It's the black ink, these lines, they can persist. They may only be on paper and parchment, but I know they will persist. I know they will survive. I know they will live on forever, and they do. His beauty, my love's beauty, his beauty shall in these black lines be seen, and they shall live, and he in them still green. It's the only thing I have. I'm a poet. I only have words. I can put down these words in black lines on paper, and I can know deep in my heart, I can know that they will survive, they will live forever. Can we doubt by now, in all seriousness, that this is me, the poet, speaking from the heart? Can there be any question as to the authenticity of these emotions, as to the authenticity of the lover, of the relationship? I don't think there can. I can't see how reasonably it can still be argued that maybe these sonnets are an exercise, maybe they are jolly japes in writing. I don't think they are. I think they're devastating, they're honest, they're brutal with myself. I'm being brutal with myself. I'm being absolutely no holds barred honest with myself, and with my lover, and with my lover. We don't know, of course, for certain that the young lover gets to read all of these sonnets, but they are certainly a bearing of the soul. They are me, the poet, standing here naked in front of you, saying, this is who I am, and this is what I have to offer, and this is where I am in relation to you. And that's why I think we are in Act 3 of a 5-act play, or in Act 2 of a 3-act story, in the middle acts, where we have the heart and the soul and the meat of the story. And this is only still really the beginning of this act. There is a lot more to come. There are many more profoundly moving and deeply revealing sonnets to come. And so remember, love is the power. And see you next week.